Welcome along to episode 2 of the Memetective podcast. I'm whiteshirt.co.uk editor Keelan Bolson, and I'm joined once again by my fellow Memetective on the case, Sam Brooks. How's it going, Sam?
It's going pretty good. Still happy to be here amid the controversy from last week's episode.
Have you managed to fight your boredom of being home alone this week?
Oh, I have, yes, by investigating many a thing across social media. I've been in the depths of Tumblr this week specifically.
I've barely ever been on Tumblr. It just confuses me. It's like meme. I don't know what's happening. What is this? Why is there a GIF?
50% memes, 50% social justice.
I don't know. And who are they? Like, who's their audience? Because last time I checked, anyone who can change things in the world is not on Tumblr.
Yeah, you'd think, wouldn't you? They always try to do these grand, like, changing of the way things are by reblogging posts and spreading it like, as we would say, wildfire. But you're not doing much, are you?
That's on the line. Probably get to that.
That's a thing we'll get onto later, I think.
But we've had a pretty interesting week this far, at least in response to the show. Only on the internet can you be accused of being a moron for accepting that the Holocaust happened, and then also be accused of being anti-Semitic and too light on Holocaust deniers in the same exact comment section.
What a magical time for everybody involved.
I don't understand.
You can't win. Simple as that.
Like, how about we don't give a shit because the topic of the show was not the Holocaust?
Yeah, it was a throwaway comment, and now it sparks this little war in the comment section.
Yeah. By two people either side of the debate, and we're somehow to blame for both sides or something.
I can keep track of it myself.
We'll perhaps get to that a bit later, along with a few other crazy comments, a few other positive comments, mixed reactions really, and we're going to start this new segment called, aptly named actually, The Court of Public Opinion, where we go to court and we face your accusations and feedback and stuff, so that should be good fun. We're going to be getting to some of your stories that you posted on Facebook. We asked you to post your own memes, false stories, and things you want us to discuss. And we're going to be getting into the Freeman movement, having a little chat about that. And there's some other stuff on there that we'll probably get to as well if we have time. But before we start today, Roddy Piper died.
He did indeed. Very sad news. He died in his sleep after a heart attack at the age of 61 in his home in Hollywood, California.
Yeah, 61. At least he's not one of these kind of wrestling tragedies where people die at like in their 30s or 40s because they've, taken too many steroids and weakened their hearts and they've done all this other, they've done drugs and they've kind of gone off the rails. At least, I guess you can say 61's it's a ripe-ish age. It's probably not as ripe as most people hope, but
for a professional wrestler, I would say it's not too bad whatsoever.
No. The list of, I don't know how many people listening are wrestling fans, but they're at least, they've cleaned up their act in, I'd say, the last decade, but there's a pretty long list of premature deaths that, it's pretty shocking when you look at it. It's all overdoses or heart attacks, basically.
Indeed, very sad state of affairs, usually.
And unless you're big wrestling fans, like me and Sam, you probably know Roddy Piper best from starring in They Live, which is one of my favourite sci-fi films. As somebody who isn't really a sci-fi fan, I don't like watching films that aren't realistic. Like, I like it to be a bit gritty. I like a lot of crime kind of stuff, but I'm not a fan of fantasy where they're like flying through the sky and fucking all this shit. Like, I don't understand it, but as someone who isn't a sci-fi fan, I do actually quite like They Live. Have you seen They Live? Or heard about it? Or
I can't say that I've seen it. I know that it's directed by, I believe, John Carpenter.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably Roddy Piper's most famous role that he's ever had. But it's very much considered a cult classic. It's inspired a lot of conspiracy theories, really, sort of based on the film's premise. You know, a film's had an impact when people sort of adopt it as a metaphor or even take it literally. The Matrix kind of had a similar effect where people really took on board the messages that it was trying to make. But in the case of They Live, the idea was that there's this invader race that kind of hides their true identity behind human form, and they're controlling things through the media. In the film, there's kind of like this news station where they're beaming kind of the mind control thing from, and all that kind of thing. And everyone's favourite conspiracy theorist, David Icke, interestingly, likes to use They Live as an example of how his theory... have you ever heard of... Do you know David Icke's theories?
I can't say that I've heard of them.
Yeah, he basically says that there is a race of shape-shifting reptilians who control the world.
Ah, the lizard people.
Yeah, exactly. And when you listen to his talks, he always points to They Live. He's like, yeah, a bit like how They Live did it. It's like, well, maybe you just plagiarized the film that Roddy Piper was in. But
possibly.
But yeah, it kind of sparked a few conspiracy theories and things. People kind of look to it as a good metaphor for how the media kind of has their ulterior motives. Because there's this scene where he puts on these glasses and he looks up at a billboard and it says obey, and it's like, oh, okay, so this is a metaphor for how the media is kind of getting you to do things. And he can also see the sort of cyborg alien things when he puts the glasses on.
You get out or I'll call the cops.
Call the cops? You know what you need? You need a Brazilian plastic surgeon.
I've got one that can see.
There's this really cool scene. It's like one of the longest single fight scenes in cinema history or something, where he's just beating up his friend. He's like, put the glasses on. And the guy's like, no, I don't want to see. I guess it's a sort of a metaphor for how when someone's indoctrinated into the system, they don't really want to consider other points of view or whatever.
Exactly. They find comfort in the system that they're in now, so God forbid they find any unsettling truths outside of it.
Yeah, and this particular scene, just a bit of trivia for the wrestling fans out there, it inspired the backlot brawl that Roddy Piper had with Goldust when he returned to the WWF in 1996, where they basically had this big long brawl outside in an alleyway. And this was kind of before the Attitude Era, before the Hardcore title, before all that kind of thing. And they had this like really cool match. It's kind of paced differently than... My guess is like they really planned this out ahead of time, because it kind of feels like a movie, the way the match is paced. But it's an interesting thing for people to watch if you are a wrestling fan. I think it was WrestleMania 12 or 13. I don't know if I've got my years right, but
it was around then, I believe, yes.
Yeah, but yeah, it was a pretty fun match, which was a homage to They Live. So I guess a lot of you listening will have watched They Live, or if you've not, you've probably heard about it. But in light of Roddy Piper's death, give it a watch. It's a pretty cool film.
Excellent. I'll put it on my to watch list.
Oh god, the to watch list. Mine's 10 miles long.
Yep, so is mine, oddly enough.
I never get round to any of it, 'cause something else comes up. It's like, oh, I'll watch this instead. But yeah, we should probably get to our stories of the week this week. Our memes, our investigations. The one that I've been looking at this week, and I've seen this on Facebook a few times in the past couple of months, really. And it's about ISIS, the Islamic State. And what it is a very poor quality image of several different photos of these so-called Islamic State fighters, and they've all supposedly got these tattoos, like these matching tattoos, and the graphic has kind of arrows pointing to the tattoos and then a zoomed in portion that supposedly reveals that these are US Army tattoos. The implication being that the US Army are actually the ones behind ISIS, or they're staging ISIS attacks for some reason, or they're infiltrating the group and they were caught. But the meme basically suggests that America's doing something dodgy here, and they may be doing something dodgy. There's a lot of different pieces of information that are quite interesting, but the text on this meme, this is what it says. It says, ISIS, before covering your face, cover your United States Army tattoos. Sort of like a snarky little comment there, and thousands of people have shared this meme thinking that they've caught the US Army red-handed carrying out some kind of fake operation. Well, not a fake operation, but faking ISIS. I mean, I sent you the image. Like, it's so poor quality. Like, I mean, when you look at that, what do you see?
I mean, you see this fucking, like, poor quality JPEG image with these fucking red box zoom in highlight things, and it's clearly just photoshopped. Like, there's no sense of realism about it, and I'm actually struggling to think why someone would go out of their way to do this in the first place.
I know that things like this have sort of happened before. There was a famous case during the Iraq War where I think it was two British troops dressed up as Arabs with like fake beards and everything, and began shooting a Iraqi police checkpoint, and they were busted red-handed. They got captured on film, and they're in all sorts of different documentaries, and people have different opinions about what they were doing. Were they deliberately trying to make the Iraqis look more violent than they were? Was this some kind of undercover operation? Whatever. But shady things like that have happened before. But let's be clear, just because X happened once doesn't necessarily mean that Y happened now. You can't just assume that something's going on here. And like you say, the first red flag to me when I looked at this is you can't even see the tattoos.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they do the whole thing where it's like they have the red circle around where the tattoo's meant to be, and they have the United States Army tattoo in a red square with a link between those two bits. On the original photos, it's barely legible what the hell these tattoos are meant to be. You could say that they're a picture of fucking Elmer Fudd, and it would have the same kind of ground.
Yeah, for all we know, it could say, like, Allah is great. Like, it could say Jihadi John loves Jihadi Jane. Like, there's no...
It could say anything, we don't know.
Exactly, and so on the face of it, if we're being objective, rational observers of this meme that's flying past our Facebook walls, there's no way of us actually knowing what the tattoos say. And secondly, the design is supposed to be a US Army tattoo, and having looked into this, the idea that there's such thing as a US Army tattoo is a bit of a misnomer, because there isn't any official tattoos in the Army. In fact, the Army has tattoo restrictions. So the idea that there is a US Army tattoo, it's not true. Perhaps individual units, might have their own tattoos. Maybe groups of friends that join the Army get their own tattoos. But the idea that on the off chance all of these different jihadis were photographed with the same US Army tattoo, it doesn't really make much sense.
Exactly. And if you look at the actual tattoo itself, it doesn't appear to be the same kind of thing that the United States Army would be proud to have on their serving bodies. I mean, what is it? It's a skull, from what I can make out, the tattoo?
Yeah, I dug into this, and really the undeniable proof that this is just bullshit is the fact that when you Google, like, people can do this right now, like, go and do this. When you Google US Army tattoo, those exact words, one of the first images that comes up is that tattoo. You can actually see where it's been taken from, where it's been photoshopped, and how it's been put onto this meme.
You're completely right, I just did that to verify, and holy shit, it's the exact same fucking thing. Down to the flesh tone and everything.
Yeah, and if you go through to the page, it's like bobstattoodesigns.com or something.
Yeah, freetattoodesigns.org to be
Right.
specific. It's like, hang on a second. I call bullshit on this.
Yeah, and it's just some random guy's tattoo. And if you get his username, you can like Google the guy's name. I think it's called Dreekzilla. That's what I put down.
Yes, that's correct.
And he's got a bit of a internet profile. You can go to his DeviantArt page where he's got some of his designs and things like that. And this took me like literally 1 minute to just Google this and realise that no, I don't think there's some random guy that's putting this tattoo on undercover military operatives who are going to show this tattoo on their arms in the middle of the day. Like, look, I have tattoo that identifies me. Like, it's just stupid.
Very, very stupid. As with most of these fucking cases, you can just dispel it with a simple Google search that will take less than 5 minutes.
And the funny thing is, this isn't the only meme. There's other variations of it. Some just have like one of the images of the ISIS fighter. Some is the same crop of images but with different text. And at least one of the images, and I'll put all this in the show notes so people can really dig into this, but one of the images is taken from a Telegraph article, and you can see that the fighter's there standing on the back of his pickup truck, and he doesn't even have a tattoo. So obviously someone's put the tattoo on his arm, and they've done a pretty shit job at doing it because you can't even see it. But
I mean, one thing that captures my attention is to the side of this image you have a Twitter handle, which is, I believe, Nader Eyebrows or something similar. Have you, by any chance, looked into that?
No, I didn't follow through the Twitter, but...
I just have. I've Googled it.
What?
I followed an Instagram account of what appears to be a Muslim lady.
Okay, so what are some of her other tweets?
Let's see. I'm on her Instagram right now, but let's go to her Twitter account and see what we can... Let's see. It appears to be a very bare bones Twitter account. It has the egg as the profile picture.
Okay.
And the only 3 tweets that this person has tweeted are to a Mr. Tom Maddox. So I don't think this is anything.
Okay. Maybe it's a fake account, deliberately
Quite possibly.
to stir up all this shit. But what troubles me about memes like this, there is an argument to be made that elements of this ISIS story that we've been told in our media are perhaps contrived in various ways. There's definitely going to be some propaganda in there from our own government and whatever. And there absolutely is an argument that our foreign policy and America's foreign policy, when we obliterated Iraq based on complete lies about weapons of mass destruction, when we took down Colonel Gaddafi and basically let Islamic extremists take over Libya for a while there, and they've not recovered at all from that. And the fact that we've, in a roundabout way, funneled aid and weapons and stuff into Syria to, quote, support the opposition against Assad, it just so happens that there are Islamic extremists in that opposition. And from the beginning, Assad was like, terrorists are attacking my government. And yeah, there was an uprising from normal people as well. But when you dig down into it, our foreign policy did help create this vacuum of power where ISIS had the ability to get in there and take control. So there are some solid arguments to be made that some of this is contrived. But people like to ignore all the complexities of that because it's difficult to wrap your head around. And they just fall for a simple, silly meme that we just debunked in like 2 minutes. Because people already believe that ISIS was sort of helped into power. They don't think critically when something comes along that supports their views. It's almost too perfect. It's like, oh yes, ISIS is fake because this meme says it is. Like, it's not that simple.
Yeah, exactly. There's a load of complexities to this whole scenario.
Have you read or seen any of this stuff about the beheading tapes and things? Like, I don't know if you've probably not watched them, but
Oh, Christ, no, I haven't watched them because that's just not my cup of tea, really, simply put. But I am aware of these. They haven't happened recently, have they? I haven't seen any, like, on the front page of a newspaper recently.
Yeah, it was mainly a few months ago. You had James Foley, the journalist who got beheaded. There was a Scottish guy, I believe. But yeah, a lot of these videos have fake elements to them. Experts in the mainstream media have said, well, there's no blood here when there should be blood. There's been edits to this portion of the tape. Special effects have been added. The video has been cut here, so we don't really know what happened when they got down to the gruesomeness of it all and things like this. The trouble is, people are assuming that because there's elements of, I guess you'd call it post-production, the CIA have faked the whole thing. You know, you can't say that conclusively. There's no way of me or you or anybody else proving that the CIA faked these videos unless something extraordinary is leaked to prove that. But it goes back to my point. People already have this view that ISIS is a contrived group. So whenever there is these fake elements to these videos that come out, people quickly lay the blame at America, the CIA. To me, that's a dangerous mindset to be in, because it leaves you open to manipulation. If somebody knows that there are all these people out there that think the CIA created ISIS, if somebody knows that, if a foreign government knows that, they can pander to that mindset and they can manipulate you. It'd be like, say, people that believe in Bigfoot. If we went to some Bigfoot convention in the woods, I don't know if they exist or not.
Oh, they definitely do somewhere, I'm sure.
But it'd be like if we went to that convention and then we started putting fake Bigfoot prints down for people to discover, and they're like, look, we found the Bigfoot prints. People are like, look, we found the CIA tapes. Perhaps something else is going on here. And I want to point listeners to this most recent video. I don't know if you've seen this or not. It's claimed to be footage of a CIA film set where ISIS have supposedly, basically, well, not ISIS, but the CIA have been caught in the act of faking the ISIS videos. You can see it's a film set, there's lighting, there's cameras, they're in the middle of a beheading scene and it's cut, and it's a CIA film set. The story is that it was found on a device that was owned by one of John McCain's staffers. You know, John McCain, the big American politician, Republican, pro-war twat, and it's being used as evidence that, yep, ISIS is fake, the US government is behind it all, we found the evidence, it was on John McCain's, secretary's mobile phone. The issue is, the video was first leaked on an obscure Russian news website. So, that begs the question, is this a double bluff? Was this actually staged by Russia deliberately to make it look like America is the one staging the ISIS videos, playing into the mindset that is already out there, that people think that ISIS is a creation of the US government, like if we went to a Bigfoot convention and put the prints out to, you know, fool all these people that already believe that this is the case. And people might say, well, why would Russia do that? Well, if you look at the target here, John McCain, Russia hates John McCain. John McCain is a warmongering twat, like he is. He every time every chance he gets, he's talking about Russia. He's always pro-war. He wants to invade Syria and all this stuff. Broadly speaking, Russia benefit from making ISIS seem like an American creation because they don't want America continuously involved in the Middle East. So what better way to kind of undermine that than to get the American public to think that, well, ISIS isn't a threat because ISIS doesn't really exist. ISIS is just something that your own government is creating because they want to be in the Middle East. And I know that's going to be confusing for some people to follow, but I think people that are just assuming this is, you know, a CIA thing that we found, it's too perfect. I think there's some kind of other agenda going on here. Whether this is just someone creating something for a laugh, possibly, but it might also be another government sticking their oar in and trying to push their own agenda with this whole ISIS thing.
I mean, I can personally think of two problems with this whole theory we have going on here. So, oh, well, there's a
Okay,
phone
I'm getting
vibrating.
rang. I don't know who you are, so you're getting close off. There you go.
There we go.
Carry on.
So the first problem I have with this whole theory is, you say that this was found on the secretary of John McCain on their phone, right?
Yeah, some staffer to John McCain.
The staffer to John McCain on their phone. Why they would have that on their phone in the first place is beyond me. Surely they wouldn't want any of this getting wind with the media, so why would you create evidence of it in the first place?
Yeah, I would like to think that, and if we go back to like previous examples of CIA covert operations and things, they're not that stupid.
No, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and why would it be a staffer to John McCain? It'd be somebody in the Pentagon, deep in the ranks of the CIA or military intelligence or something. It wouldn't be fucking Bob the coffee maker.
Yeah, exactly that. And the other main problem that I have with it all being, these beheadings say that they're staged, they're fake. Where are the victims?
You see, that's where it gets. That's where the goalposts get widened, and people. This is the thing. When people come up with a theory like this, sometimes it's grounded in some kind of historical fact, maybe this or that, but they never close all the loopholes. Where are the victims? I have no idea. Are they in on it? Why would they be in on it? Is there any evidence that they're in on it? And it gets to an absurd level where people are like, this dead person's family member is made a funny face in this media appearance. That means it's a conspiracy. Like, no, it doesn't mean that.
I mean, the main thing I was thinking is, say, to us, these people are now dead because they've been beheaded by ISIS. If that's supposed to be fake, how are they going to cover up the fact that these people are supposed to be dead? Are they given new identities? Are they given, like, plastic surgery to make them look different? Like, I'm pretty sure if you saw James Foley walking about in the street, you would notice.
Yeah, you have that with the 9/11 thing. People say that the planes were empty and they were remote controlled, or there was no planes, or the plane landed in mid-flight and everyone got scurried off somewhere else and killed by the government. If I was a CIA agent and I wanted to create these beheadings in the Middle East so the public would rally around an intervention, because I want to invade Syria already, because I want to get all the natural resources in Syria. First off, I would probably just completely stage everything. We don't need James Foley or these journalists to go missing. We'll just pretend there's journalists, and we'll just make up backstories to them. And do you know what I mean? Like, we don't actually need real people to be involved.
Yeah, exactly. You would create, like, fictional characters with exposition. Like, they don't have to be people grounded in the real world.
Or I would have some kind of infiltration of ISIS, and I would encourage it to happen for real. But then why would we need to have all these fake added special effects and things? So, like, any way you spin it, it doesn't really make sense. One logical explanation could be that ISIS in 2015 have, I don't know, Adobe After Effects on their laptop.
Possibly.
Maybe they're just budding filmmakers on the side and they like to add special effects.
Yeah, they hired some freelance editors off of Gumtree, you see.
Yeah, like, it sounds absurd, but, like, there's kind of this idea that these guys are crazy bearded people that live in caves. We're in 2015 now. That's not necessarily the case. They have laptops and computer equipment, and, you know, they have money behind them.
I mean, you would need that if you want to be a major, like, terrorist organization, right?
Right.
You can't work with sticks and stones. You gotta work with fucking Macs and shit.
And the first video that everyone kind of pointed this out, that, oh, there's no blood, was the James Foley execution, perhaps ISIS deliberately edited out the gore, because they did. You don't actually see the bit where the head comes off. So maybe that was a PR move. So our news networks were fine playing the video because they did. And that gets them more publicity around the world because we're happy playing a video where we don't see the gore. So that them knowing that, they edited it deliberately for that purpose, so they could get more publicity rather than it just sort of sitting on Live Leak or these gore websites that just weirdos watch. They managed to get it into the mainstream media.
Sure, you can't show a journalist being beheaded by ISIS on TV, but you can show Colonel Gaddafi being shot on TV.
Just because you believe a certain thing about ISIS doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't some other ulterior motive, whether it's the Russian government, whether it's some prick who's just having a laugh and wants you to think that this video is made by the American government, whether someone with a website just wants fucking hits, I don't know. But with the lack of proof either way, none of us could say exactly where this came from. Like, you can't base your worldview on stuff that you can't even verify. So you think this video was made by the American government, then in a couple of years something else will happen and you'll be like, oh yeah, remember when that video was staged by the US government, when you've not even proven that it was. You're just going to get into a weird mindset where you're nowhere near the truth.
I mean, I think the only concrete thing that we can say is that these photoshopped photographs have been debunked.
Yep. Meme number 1 this week. Not real. Sorry. So, moving on to your story, Sam. What have you been investigating this week?
Well, are you familiar with the name of Sandra Bland, Keelan?
Yeah.
I mean, what have you heard about this entire debacle in the United States?
Since you brought it up, today I did watch the arrest video of this woman, and I was quite disturbed by it. I don't know if you have.
Oh, I have. I also watched it. It's the dash cam footage of this police officer pulling over this African American lady known as Sandra Bland for some form of routine traffic stop, I believe. She refused to signal when changing lanes.
Yeah, the way she described it in the video was, and we don't necessarily know that what she said is true, because I'm not... Has the actual video of the policeman following her been released?
I believe it has, yes.
Oh, okay, well, I may be wrong then, but she says, and people can obviously go see if it's true or not, but she says that the policeman was sort of tailing her and tailgating her and was right behind her, and he didn't have his sirens on or anything like that. He was just kind of, what the hell is this guy doing behind me? So, to give him room, she pulls over to the side of the road to let him pass. And because she didn't put her indicator light on to indicate that she was changing lanes to let him pass, at that point, he pulls her over. So, if that's true, and it might not be, or there may be grey areas to it, well, why the fuck was he tailing her and up, right behind her, tailgating her, if up until that point she hadn't done anything? He pulls her over when she moved over to let him pass because he was being weird. So that's kind of the start of it.
Indeed. And the officer, who is, I believe, called Brian Encinia, he pulled over Sandra Bland and was going to charge her for whatever fucking traffic violation that she had. But the interaction became heated after a while, at which point he removes her from the car, threatening to tase her in the process. Quote, "I will light you up. Get out now," he says.
This wasn't a hit and run. She wasn't a wanted suspect. She wasn't fleeing from a crime scene. She failed to put her indicator light on. Usually, when that happens, cop comes over, asks for your license registration, please, and you give it to them. And they're like, are you aware that you didn't signal when you just did that? And you might be like, oh, sorry, officer, I didn't realise, blah, blah, blah. And they may, 9 times out of 10, they'll just say, okay, get on with your day, think better next time, whatever. Usually it doesn't really get to the point of get the fuck out the car. It can usually be handled without that. You don't need to arrest this woman and take her down the station and all that kind of thing. It's not a massive deal. I think the problem was she wasn't about to, be his bitch. She wasn't about to just, let him be all kind of aggressive and abusive and confrontational and like put that fucking cigarette out kind of thing.
Oh yes, exactly. The cigarette is what I believe caused the escalation in the first place, because after Encinia caused all the traffic stop and all of that, he asks her to put out her cigarette, to which she responds, "Why should I? I'm inside my own car." At which point it escalates to the point of him opening the car door himself, forcing her out of the car, going conveniently off camera from the dash cam, and arresting her. To what end? We don't know.
And this is the interesting thing, because all the way through this screaming, ow, your knees in my fucking back, you're, pulling my arm, he keeps saying, stop resisting, I'm arresting you, all this kind of shit. And she's like, what are you arresting me for? And he's like, he doesn't answer. He's just like, oh, just shouting, stop resisting. He
says, I am giving you a lawful order, and doesn't go beyond any of that. So the motivation behind this is completely a mystery.
This is the thing, you see this a lot. Police officers will arrest people for resisting arrest. And then when you're like, well, what were you arresting me for me to resist? And they don't really know. Well, there has to be a crime that was at the scale of warranting an arrest for you to then, you can't arrest somebody for resisting arrest.
No,
there
exactly.
has to be an arrest to start with.
Precisely that, and they often cite in this case that Bland was actually arrested for kicking the guy, and that's being assaulting a public servant. She was argumentative and uncooperative, but I'm not going to say can you blame her, but under these circumstances, I think we can understand why she acted like she did. Maybe that's what caused this in the first place, but it just seems like a mess.
Have you ever had any run-ins with police or anything like that? Not that I'm insinuating anything, but...
No, I think the closest I've ever gone to that is a run-in with some stormtroopers at Comic-Con, so I'm completely free of any law-breaking.
Well, I have an interesting story, because one night I had been to the pub, had a few pints with my friend, I was eating a kebab, we were walking home on the path, and almost out of nowhere, these two PCSOs, they're not even police officers, they don't even have the powers to actually arrest you, they have to just try and trick you to stay with them until police actually arrive, and they just popped out of the bushes, literally, that's how it seemed to me anyway, came out from around this corner, and so what have you been doing harassing a guy on a bike? And I'm like, what? I've not seen any guy on a bike. And they're like, this member of the public has just come forward and said you were harassing him, and they weren't even specific about what exactly had taken place, and this guy on the bike wasn't with them to say, look, these are the guys that harassed me or whatever. And I was in the same mindset as this woman, who the hell are you? Why are you doing this to me? I've done nothing. Just go away. And the mindset of police and PCSOs and all that is that you have to respect them no matter what they're doing. And for about 5-10 minutes, they were trying to get my personal details. So what's your name? Where do you live? And I'm like, am I obliged to tell you that? I'm just walking home. And they're like, where do you live? And I just point, I'm like, yeah, I live over there. And give me the address. And for ages this went on, and I was like, are you arresting me for a crime? And they're like, no, we'll arrest you for obstruction of some fucking bullshit. Like, how can you arrest me for obstruction of a crime that I don't even understand? I don't know. There's no guy on a bike. I never saw any guy on a bike.
Yeah, exactly.
And this went on and on and on and on until I said, okay, I live at number whatever on whatever. And then they walked off. And I'm like, what the fuck was that all about? The whole situation was simply me acquiescing to their power. Like, they didn't like contact us later. There was no investigation. This was just me sort of cowering down and saying, yes, officer, I live at this place. Like, there was, and that's the problem. In this video, she's not about to bow down to him just because he's a police officer. So he gets pissed and he pulls her out and arrests her.
Exactly, and whilst I believe she's on the phone to her sister, she actually asks, how did switching lanes with no signal turn into all of this?
Yeah.
And it gets even more interesting when she later dies in her prison cell.
She's dead.
She's dead. This woman is now dead because of a fucking traffic violation.
Yeah, and this opens so many different cans of worms because I've not dug too deep into this, but when I see this woman on this tape, you know, she seems like quite a proud woman. She's standing her ground. She knows her rights. She's being a bit confrontational, but to me, that she says in a video, you know, let's take this to court. Let's do this. Let's see a resolution to this. That's not the mindset of somebody who's a couple days later is going to hang herself. She's ready to fight this in court. She's angry. She hates these guys. They've pulled her over for no reason. She's a businesswoman. You know, she's got a nice car. She's not some fuck up.
No,
exactly. Unless there's things we don't know, I don't understand how she goes, oh, I'm going to kill myself. Like, what the fuck?
Well, let's have a look at some of the facts here. She was discovered by a jailer at like 9 o'clock in the morning, found in a semi-standing position, hanged by what appears to be a plastic bag.
Right. Where's this plastic bag from?
We don't know.
Is there like a bin in there with a bin bag or something? That would just break her, wouldn't it?
It would, and it's weird because how would you be able to do this in a prison cell?
At least without anyone noticing, because if I remember rightly, there's 2 cells and there was someone else in the one right next to her?
I believe so, yes.
You would think, I mean, again, I don't know because I've not looked into this deeply, but has that person said anything? Like, I saw her do this, I heard her do this?
I don't believe we've heard anything from that.
That's interesting.
Which is even weirder. And a toxicology report states that she had a remarkably high concentration of THC for someone who had been in jail for 3 days.
So she'd basically been smoking pot, or somehow had, yeah.
Apparently she had access to marijuana whilst in jail.
That's interesting. I don't know about that. I know that drug tests for pot, they can detect that weeks and weeks after. So, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, was it explicitly said that this was in too high concentrations to...
Yeah, it is, quote, a remarkably high concentration, and they thought it might have been due to ingesting a very large amount of marijuana, like, before the arrest, but if you look at the video of the arrest, this isn't a woman under the influence of drugs.
Yeah, she's not... Either she's a seasoned professional marijuana connoisseur, or... Like, she's not stoned out of her face, like, obviously.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a toxicologist stated that he had never, ever seen a report in the literature or form any other source of residual THC that high 3 days after someone stops using the drug. So, that's just another thing entirely. Did that have a role to play in her death? Maybe.
Well, that's interesting because, from what I understand, this is a holding cell, right? So it's a small little bit of police station. There's a couple of cells. you you can't get drugs in a place like that unless the guards gather it. Like it doesn't in a prison. It's a huge complex. There's all sorts of different kind of ways you can breach that and get drugs in and stuff like that. Everyone knows that, but this is a local little police. Like there's unless they didn't search her and she had it up her ass or something.
Which isn't likely.
No, exactly. There's no real way she would have got that in prison.
And
Well, in the holding cell.
yeah, exactly. And this jail itself has like numerous like policy violations, like guards failing to check inmates properly. Like they're supposed to do it hourly, but they didn't even do that. The employees weren't adequately trained to deal with mental health problems, which Sandra Bland apparently had. She had, like, apparently PTSD and bouts of depression, so not exactly the most mentally fit woman out there. But regardless, these jail employees and jailers obviously weren't trained to deal with the situation.
Yeah, like so. Even if she did have mental health issues, maybe she was on medication, maybe this or that. Obviously, they didn't help her in that regard. Because
Exactly.
if she did kill herself, well, maybe they should have paid a bit of close attention to what the fuck was going on.
Exactly. Suicide watch is a thing, and they failed to put her on that, and they, just give her the plastic bag to do this with?
Yeah, and again though, I just go back to the way she was acting in the video, confident, a little bit confrontational, I know my rights kind of thing.
Exactly.
I want to take this to court. She doesn't seem like somebody that would do that. Obviously, bipolar and things, you can be that way 1 minute, then a couple of days later you're depressed. But did she get a phone call to her lawyer and her family? And I don't understand that, to be quite honest. Even if you were depressed, oh, I'm in jail, I'm ashamed, I don't like this situation. It was a traffic stop. Nothing bad was necessarily going to happen to her. And I'm sure intellectually she would know that. She's not stupid. Like, she knows she'll be out in a couple of days. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that she would commit suicide. And then, we've talked about this, but I remember now, I also clicked another link. There was CCTV of the cell area. So
Yes, exactly.
so you would have seen anyone if she'd taken all this pot somehow, maybe some fucking super brownie or something, or she obviously didn't smoke it because that would have been obvious. But like we would have seen some of these things happening. There should be video of a lot of this.
Yes, exactly. And earlier I accidentally portrayed a bit of misinformation. The inmate held in the adjacent cell actually gave some form of statement towards this kind of thing.
Okay.
She, Alexandria Pyle, first of all, the inmate held in the adjacent cell, spoke with Bland, like, through a tiny, like, chute thing that separated the cells, and that apparently, according to her, Bland was upset and distraught over the fact that her friend didn't come to bail her out, and she just seemed kind of emotional and was crying frequently, so
Okay. Well,
there's
yeah,
that to consider.
I can see how somebody who perhaps isn't in the best state of mind, you don't want to feel abandoned. I can imagine a scenario where that would perhaps lead to a suicide, and if you've got THC in your system somehow, that can play tricks on your mind at the same time. Obviously, I'm not anti-marijuana because I like the stuff, but but like, yeah, obviously we can imagine different scenarios where that could have led to her being really depressed and perhaps committing suicide. But again, why is she there? Why did this get to this point? Why did nobody fucking notice? Why didn't they check if she had mental health issues? There's a whole list of things here that she shouldn't be dead.
Yes, exactly, and it gets even more interesting when we take a look at the mugshot of Sandra Bland. There have been several conspiracy theories regarding this. Basically, the gist of it is that the mugshot was taken when she was dead. Like, she was already dead by the time she got to the jail, and that they just put her on the floor in prison clothes and then took the mugshot.
Yeah.
And there is several schools of thought about this. It's been ruled as a conspiracy purely because of the fact that they released footage of the mugshot being taken in the first place.
Oh, they did.
And I've seen it on Tumblr. People are saying that that's not Sandra Bland. It's just clearly a fatter black woman, and they pass it off as Sandra Bland. But I don't know if that has any ground to it at all. The fact that her hair is kind of going backwards, like it's being held down by gravity, whereas in other photos, the hair would kind of settle down on her face because she has dreadlocks. And there are two versions of a mugshot going around. One which is
Yeah, I've seen it.
photoshopped to like make her look more dead for whatever reason.
This is the thing that annoys me sometimes. Is when you have a point, there's a strong point here that this woman shouldn't be dead. Don't muddy the fucking waters by faking photos and making fake. Do you know what I mean? There's no need
exactly.
to. It's fucking stupid, but
Yeah. And there's a positioning of her shoulders, of course, leading to the fact that she might be lying on the floor. There's the color of the background
yeah,
in
that's
the
what I was
mugshot
gonna bring up.
matching the fucking floor of her cell.
That's what I read, and that's what made me have a kind of second thought, like, because people were saying if you look at other mugshots, that's not the place where they do the mugshots, or
Yeah. And
so.
it's very, very confusing because there's evidence towards sort of both conclusions, and failing that, we have the the documentation where she has stated to them, "Yes, I have attempted suicide before," and they just didn't put her on suicide watch. They marked down that she has never tried to commit suicide. She even told them that she miscarried once, and they put down on the form she's never been pregnant. So there's discrepancies in the fucking jail documents.
Obviously, this is some fucking. Where did this happen? What was the state or town? Or this is some
It
fucking
occurred in Walter County, I believe, in Texas.
bumfuck town where they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Exactly.
Some lazy ass people. Oh well, we'll just tick that box. Oh, fuck
Yeah,
it.
Waller County in Texas.
There's, you can take this to different levels, but they're fucking incompetent no matter what happened.
And this is another thing in a long, long line of spates of, police aggression towards the African American community,
Yeah.
resulting in the murder of innocent African Americans. And you gotta think, is there an end to this?
It's weird because part of me thinks obviously this should come to light and it needs to be addressed by America as a society, but part of me thinks the publicity of it makes it worse because you have police that want to defend the police, you have people that automatically want to defend the so-called victims. You get cases where actually, yes, the people that were killed probably were being complete, like it was justified. People will just look the other way and say, well, this is another case of police brutality when perhaps that case wasn't. But then on the flip side, you have police that are too quick to come to the aid of their fellow police people. And then you get the point where if you are a white cop and you're policing black areas, you're going to feel more scared because you know that the black people are going to be more confrontational. And I have no doubt that a lot of this stuff comes from fear. I know it sounds like a cop-out, but I think there's perhaps a police training issue where they're not experienced enough. They do get scared. They do get trigger happy. There's so many grey areas, and I think the problem is the media's created a divide where it's us versus them, and people are picking sides, and people are going into confrontations where there probably wouldn't have been a confrontation because the cop thinks the black person's already angry and the black person thinks the cop's already out to kill them, and it gets kind of silly if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it really does, and it's sad. Simply put, it's sad that this should be happening in this day and age. So, what do we know about Sandra Bland? She died because of a traffic violation.
And that doesn't happen in this country.
No,
It doesn't happen quite like that in this country.
no, definitely
And
not.
that's something to think about. I don't know. There's something in the way American police are trained where they're a lot more. Obviously, because guns are involved and citizens have guns, they're a lot more kind of militarized. That they've got more of a mentality of, I'm an authority over you. I mean, we'll get onto this actually with the Freeman stuff, but you watch kind of confrontations in this country, and they go on forever, and it's just back and forth, and eventually something happens and people get arrested. But America's too quick, I think, to get violent on both sides. Like in this country, there's a lot of talking. In America, it's just like, get the fuck out of the car, put your fucking hands up. I'm gonna, don't run, else I'll shoot you in the back. Like,
Exactly.
it's a weird one.
Indeed. But I think that wraps up all I have to say about this, and hopefully we get some more conclusive evidence and repercussions based on this case.
Yeah, hopefully. If we move on now to what we're going to call our cadet cases.
You're one of Jack Crawford's, aren't you?
I am, yes.
That expires in 1 week. You're not real FBI, are you?
I'm still in training at the academy.
On the pilot episode, we asked you guys to send in any memes or false stories that you yourselves had come across in the week, and we discussed them on the air. And we got quite a few responses. We'll start with Oliver Beck, who wanted us to, quote, look at the Tom Crawford story and the Freeman movement as a whole. Are you familiar with the Freeman movement, the common law movement?
I've had run-ins with it before, but why don't you explain to any listeners who don't?
I'll tell people kind of how I came across it. It's something I read about quite a few years ago now when I was looking into the financial system. I just wanted to understand what the fuck, where does money come from? I don't understand what's happening, why is there a financial crisis and shit like that. And I came across this book that still does the rounds today. People can download it as a free ebook somewhere. It's by a woman called Mary Elizabeth Croft, and she claims basically that she was able to write off all of her debts. She kind of explains how you can get out of paying off your loans. She makes the case that the money that's lent to you doesn't exist in the first place, and all these kind of concepts. That's only really a part of it, but for people that want to find that, it's a bit of a long-winded read, but it's called How I Clobbered Every Bureaucratic Cash Confiscatory Agency Known to Man. It's a little bit out there. Like, I'm not sure that she really did. There's a weird disconnect with the Freeman movement where they think they've got out of something when no, the bank just gave up trying to collect the debt. Not because you successfully argued it in court, but just because after so many years they do cancel debts, just a thing. But that was sort of my introduction to the Freeman concept, reading that book. But basically, Freemen claim that the only true law of the land is something called common law. And common law was kind of the early form of the legal system, dates back to the Middle Ages, and they claim that this is the only law that is sort of justified. And because that all the other laws that were passed after that were sort of made by government through acts of parliament, statutes and acts and things, that those laws are only valid because we consent to them. And I think that's basically because, we elect a government democratically, they're our representatives, and if we don't agree to what they do, then it's not valid. I think that's kind of the principle. So they play all of these word games, and you can find videos on YouTube of this, where like a policeman will be arresting somebody and they'll say, do you understand? Like after he's read your rights and things like that. And the free man will respond, no, I don't stand under you, because they think it's some kind of word trick that police play to kind of get your consent to the law. So as long as you don't consent, their view is that the law doesn't apply to you. And you can see all these videos. They're like, "What law are you arresting me under?" And the cop will be like, "The Public Order Act, fucking 2000 and whatever." And they'll be like, "No, but that was an act passed by Parliament. That doesn't apply to me. What law are you arresting me under?" And they go on these long-winded rants back and forth, kind of in a lot of cases, kind of arrogantly trying to school the policeman about what the law is. And the cops, most of the time, have no fucking idea what these people are blithering on about. And after a long back and forth, the person will, 9 times out of 10 be arrested for whatever crime the policeman thinks that, they're guilty of. And they apply all sorts of different things to this. Some of them won't get driver's licenses and will just drive around without driver's licenses or insurance because they don't think it applies to them. They'll take out loans and they won't pay the loan back or they won't pay the interest because they think that's a scam in a certain way, and maybe it is in a certain way, but they'll build houses or kind of do the kind of what's the word, travelers gypsy kind of thing where they don't have planning permission and they're not allowed there. But they say, I'm a free man on the land. This is a common law jurisdiction. You can't arrest me. So they add all this kind of extra stuff on there. And they basically, because they don't consent, they say it doesn't apply to them. And some of them take it to quite extreme levels. For example, they'll have children and circumvent the birth certificate process and won't get their children birth certificates. And then you see all these horrible videos of like police removing children from families who haven't got their kids' birth certificates and have been kind of confrontational for several years, and the children get taken into care and all this kind of thing. But the logic behind that is they say that the birth certificate is like signing a contract to say, I'm part of England, I agree to the laws, arrest me when I break the law. They say, well, if you don't have a birth certificate, then none of this applies to you. So that's kind of Freeman in a nutshell, a long-winded nutshell. But yeah, what do you think about that?
I think it's kind of crazy, really. I mean, people can sort of believe whatever they want to believe, but in this form of society and government that we have now, is it really conducive to be a freeman on the land? Like, why would you want to do it?
Yeah, this is the thing. Like, I don't know the specifics of this Tom Crawford case. The official story, and this doesn't necessarily mean it's true, there could be some shady stuff going on with the bank or whatever, but this guy seemingly failed to pay his mortgage, and after like 8 years of warnings that, hang on buddy, you've got to pay this, and from what I can gather, he had an endowment policy, which is, it's a bit like insurance where you pay it every month and eventually, like, say you have an accident, you get paid out. In this case, eventually they will pay out a lump sum and then you take that lump sum to pay off your mortgage. Obviously you have to meet the terms of the endowment policy, and the official story is he stopped paying his endowment policy, so that lump sum never came, so he never paid off his mortgage, and after 8 years he was evicted. And there was a big showdown. People initially blocked police and whatnot, and he managed to stay in his home. It was an emotional story because he's suffering from cancer and all this kind of thing. But basically a lot of people from the free man movement were trying to advise him what to do, what to say in court, what to tell the police, and they were campaigning for him and made this like the big free man story for a while. But ultimately it didn't help him because free man doesn't work. So it's my understanding now that he doesn't have his house. And like I say,
all in all, it's for nothing now.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know the finer details of what happened. Perhaps the lender did. He says the lender changed the terms and he wasn't aware or something. But even if that happened and he's got a legitimate argument to make, he's had a lot of years to properly sort this out. And the Freeman concept is not exactly the best way to go about saving your house. Like, you can't just run away from the problem because you think there's some magical solution that has never worked before.
Right, yeah.
So Oliver Beck asks, what is our overall views on the Freeman movement? It doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't appear to be functional and in society as we know it, so why bother being one?
Yeah, you will be arrested if you break the law. Whether the law was passed by Parliament, it was legislation or an act or statute or whatever, you will face the consequences. There's no magic words or special process that will exempt you from what the rest of society is doing.
Exactly, yeah.
Yet a lot of these free men seem to sort of be chasing this weird holy grail of kind of legal mumbo jumbo. This multiple hour-long videos of them explaining the finer details of this or that. You need to issue the judge this notice, and you need to say this at this point. They never win. They never win. No judge has ever embraced a Freeman argument. You may have been found not guilty, or see, this is the confusing thing, because every so often there'll be a so-called winning case where the Freeman won. Well, when you look at it, it's not the Freeman process that won. It was simply, whatever reason, but not what they think it is.
Exactly, yeah.
So from a practical standpoint, it's pointless. Even if the concept has some truth to it, and you've found all this old legal stuff, and perhaps the government didn't have the right to start adding new laws, and you found the smoking gun, it doesn't matter because the government and the rest of the country don't agree with you, so it doesn't matter. Like, this is the reality we live in. Just because you have a Black's Law Dictionary from fucking 1853, it's not a magic spell book. They're gonna put handcuffs on you and fucking hit you with a truncheon.
Right, exactly. Just comply, I guess. Well, don't comply, but don't be a Freeman.
And what concerns me is, like this Tom Crawford case and some other things, there are these so-called Freeman legal experts that try and advise you what to do. Like, oh, you have to send your bank this, then you won't have to pay this loan because of this thing that was written 1 billion years ago. Is like, if you're legally advising somebody from this position that Freeman works, then you're a complete prick. Like,
yeah, basically, you're doing it to justify your own sort of pseudo-political movement.
Yeah, and this Tom Crawford thing, this guy who's had failed cases before, he has a long criminal record, he's releasing a documentary about the Freeman movement and mortgages and stuff, and he's basically just, risen to prominence off the back of this poor guy that's lost his fucking house. If the Freemen treated this more as like a philosophy or a form of protest, sort of like a way to rebel against the system without harming anybody, fair enough. It's not going to work as a practical solution, but if you just want to simply cause some nuisance and prolong some trials and just piss the system off a bit, then fine, more power to you. But just recognise that there are consequences, and if you have a family, if you have a child, if you're advising somebody, just remember that there will be consequences.
Exactly.
And in my house, we don't pay the TV license. That's our own little form of protest.
Right.
We don't pretend that we're exempt from paying it. We don't send these silly little legal letters that people have templates of, where they send you you must pay, and then apparently you can write on it, no contract, return to sender. No, that doesn't work. You're not
No.
going to send that back to them and they go like, oh, they don't want to contract with us. Oh, well, okay, we'll close this case. Like, no, we know that we're supposed to pay it. We just don't, and we don't answer the door, and we tell them to fuck off.
Right.
That's like our little protest thing. So
There you go.
if you come from this in that mindset, fine. Piss them off. Tell them to fuck themselves. I don't agree with these laws. But there's no magic words. There's no special process that's going to help you not get arrested. Nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about the Freeman movement.
Yeah.
That's kind of my overall view on that. I don't know if I've pissed some people off. I'm sure.
Oh, probably.
Yeah, we'll get some comments about, oh no, but you don't understand that, it's a common law, and it's like, no.
You have to watch 6 hours worth of documentaries, then you'll understand.
Yeah. I don't need to understand because nobody else cares. If no one cares about what you're saying, then it's irrelevant.
Right, exactly.
So there was a few of the stories sent in by our Memetective cadets.
I'm still in training at the academy.
Just quickly, Heather Martin asks, oh, this is funny, how about Kevin Annett and his being responsible for Pope Benedict's resignation and for dissolving Canada? Dissolving Canada. What?
The country.
I didn't know Canada was made of sugar.
Either they stopped that sentence, or Canada as we know it doesn't exist.
No, Kevin Annett is mental. So
Apparently so, yes.
we could talk about that, but no, he's just stupid. There's another one here from Saul Caldwell, and he sent across this meme that the Rothschilds were behind the disappearance of flight MH370 because there was a patent with a semiconductor. What's a semiconductor, Sam?
Let's turn to Google, shall we?
I don't know what a semiconductor is. There's a patent for one, apparently. Is it like a flux capacitor?
A semiconductor is a substance, usually a solid chemical element or compound that can conduct electricity under some conditions but not others, making it a good medium for the control of electrical current.
Is this... this could go so many different angles. Is this Tesla's free energy thing? Is this...
I think so.
Is this alien Anunnaki gold that can be used? Oh, God. Apparently, there's patent holders that were on board of this flight, and they died. And because the only one remaining is Jacob Rothschild, he gets the patent, and he owns it.
Seems like a roundabout way to do it, but,
It sounds like one of those bullshit stories, but...
I wouldn't cast it aside, myself. I would look into this deeper.
Yeah, I don't know. The first step, I guess, would be to check whether this patent exists, and you can do that, because patents are registered. So, I mean, that's one thing. Then we could check whether these people were actually on the plane. That's another thing. So, I mean, there's some basic facts here we could probably check. But we've not had time to do that, so... I don't really know. Maybe. Seems like a lot of trouble to... if you were going to bump some people off so you could have the rights to the patent all by yourself, would you kill, all these other people at the same time?
Yeah, exactly. There appears to be a lot of civilian casualties in this scenario.
Yeah, are you that callous that you would somehow manage to do this?
Over a patent?
Yeah. I'm not sure, is it worth that much? What is this?
Well, I imagine it's worth enough for them to do this in the first place, but...
Maybe we'll investigate this for next week, I don't know. But I literally have no idea, I don't know. I think that'll wrap that bit up, but we also want to get to the Court of Public Opinion.
Here we go.
It's now time for the Court of Public Opinion.
People don't like us.
Apparently not.
Well, some of them do.
I'm
Well,
fairly used to having a controversy, so let's see what this is all about, shall we?
the Holocaust.
Oh yeah.
Um, Guy D. Severance says, "Oh, Sam, you moron! There's a world of evidence that the Holocaust never happened." What's your response to that?
It happened. Like, I don't know what the fuck you want me to say, man. The Holocaust, it happened.
Just even talking about this is funny because people are gonna hate you or love you or fucking
Like,
elaborate.
well, fucking, it's taught to us, like, in schools, and there's, like,
Oh, but
records in the history
schools
books.
are propaganda, Sam.
Oh no, they're propaganda. Like, God forbid, but fucking come on, man. I know, sure, there's room to move about and sort of say, okay, there's discrepancies between, like, factual evidence and hypothesis of what could have happened.
Yeah, and perhaps exaggerations.
Yes, yes.
There have been countless so-called Holocaust survivors that weren't Holocaust survivors. There's things here and there, but like my response to the guy, I was playing devil's advocate really. I basically said, yeah, the numbers are incorrect. I've heard about that before. I've heard about how, it obviously wasn't just Jews that died. There was other people that were also targeted. I understand, whatever. But even assuming kind of all that is true, oh no, they didn't exterminate this many millions of people. They just died because it was a war and we couldn't get aid to them or whatever. You can't say it didn't happen. So, like, something happened. So even if you assume that's true, to just go, the Holocaust never happened, like, you're being a dick.
Yeah, there's enough evidence to say that the Holocaust happened, and I'm gonna put my faith in that evidence.
It's such as Hitler's own writings.
Yeah.
Like,
And if you're gonna believe anything, believe that.
yeah.
Not to mention the Holocaust denial is illegal in most places, so...
Well, it's illegal in not many places actually. Like, it's illegal in some parts of Europe, but in America, it's a flourishing trade. There's lots of Holocaust deniers.
Well, I'm glad I don't live over there, let's say that.
But this gets funnier because I said that I was playing devil's advocate, like, oh, even if you say all these things are true, it still doesn't mean nothing happened. And then this crazy woman went on a massive tirade at me. She says, if you think people being held against your will in a concentration camp and just dying of starvation doesn't constitute part of the final solution, you are out of your stupid, stupid mind. Yeah. That was kind of my point. I didn't use those exact words. I was trying to be tactful. Maybe I should have been a twat to this guy. I don't know. But that was kind of what I was getting at. I mean, obviously it went over your head. But, like, there's this weird thing on the internet where people... Who's screaming? Did you hear that?
You're getting the Holocaust deniers at your door.
It literally sounded like people and cats screaming. They got pitchforks at my door, but yeah, there's this thing on the internet where people like to ignore. They like to take everything literal, and even if they know you're not being literal, they like to sort of be willfully ignorant about what you wrote just so they can spout off at you. It's like, that's not what I said. So I replied to her and I was like, that's not what I meant. This is what I meant. But it kind of escalated from there.
I mean, the source of this was a throwaway comment where I said, Holocaust denial is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Thank you, Screaming Child. Yes, I agree.
Sounds like a Holocaust is happening right now. Oh.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, but then she goes on to say, she says, where are we? It takes a huge leap of moral ignorance and ignorance in general and willingness to believe even the most outrageous lunatic fringe second-hand rot to even be a relevantist like you are. Hang on a minute. Willingness to believe fringe lunatic bullshit. I don't know if you want to do this now, but go to Tanya Knott's channel on YouTube and click the About page. I'll paste the name to you if you want. Let me.
Oh yes, please.
Where's the chat thing? Here we go. Search that on YouTube. Because when you go to her About page on her channel, and I quote, this is what she says, I quote, "I am a psychic." She thinks she's a psychic.
Okay.
Says, "I am a psychic, personal development coach, blogger, and analyst for the alternative media, as well as the paranormal."
That thing that also doesn't exist.
Whose willingness to believe in fringe lunatic bullshit? Mine or hers?
I'm gonna say hers.
And as a development coach, shouldn't she have developed some personal skills where she can comment on YouTube without being a complete cunt?
I'm sure you can read all about it on her blog as well. You know.
Let me just read some of her video titles. These are great. In a comment, she keeps referring to the show as being an example of the conspiracy community, or me being a representative of the conspiracy community. She says, "The entire conspiracy community, all I see repeatedly, besides the usual Tea Party twits from North America, the Brits are the most negative, cynical, and ignorant." Sorry, old chap. I didn't mean to be cynical and ignorant.
That's just us being British. I don't know what you're expecting here. We're not chipper.
And then she goes, "Yay, conspiracy community, always on the cutting edge of cherry picking and muddying of the waters to justify internalized biases." I don't even disagree with her, but why is she directing this at us?
I mean, who are we?
Yeah, did we just say the angel was real and aliens are real and all this other shit? No. Who's a representative of the conspiracy community? Us, or "I am a psychic, I am a personal development coach and blogger and paranormal expert"? It's like she's arguing with herself.
Quite possibly.
And what else did she put here? Here are some titles of her videos, just to illustrate to listeners how crazy some people can be when you do a podcast. Because when you're on the internet, there are crazy people. She says, "Odd-shaped clouds and helicopter fly by outside my window."
So...
Well, I didn't know clouds had even shapes. I always thought they were quite odd-shaped.
Is there a regular standard cloud shape that we're supposed to cross-reference with the chart? What?
Oh dear. Then here's another one. "The role of aspect consciousness in UFO technology."
What technology?
UFO technology.
Ah, right, okay.
You know that technology that technology we all have where we fly around in UFOs.
That thing from Independence Day, yeah.
Channeled message from the Anunnaki.
Oh lord.
So not only is she psychic, she can talk to aliens.
I'm sure there's riveting conversation to be had there.
Here's another. Drake's equation proves that life 100% exists on other planets.
100%?
100%.
As opposed to 80%, 90%?
I thought Drake was a rapper.
No, he is.
So
I'd like to see what authority he has on this subject.
His equation apparently proves that there's aliens. We'll leave it with this one. She says, "I've worked with local, state, national and international law enforcement agencies on missing persons cases and cold case homicides for years because they don't take me seriously. So that's why someone wanted me to remote view lost and buried artifacts for the Vatican, and the CIA wanted to work with me as well on a stack of remote viewing experiments."
Anyone can say that on the internet.
look, I know the men who stare at goats. Have you seen that film, that book?
Oh, yes.
Sure, like, the US government did at one time, probably still do, experiment with things like psychic abilities and remote viewing and all that stuff. Okay, they did actually do that. And hey, maybe you were one of the people that got paid to lay on your ass every day and pretend that you were viewing stuff in different places around the world and then drawing circles and squares and saying, oh, that looked like the square that was over there. Like, if I was that could be true, but if I was a betting man and someone had a gun to my head right now and it was either like death or life, if I got this bet right, I would probably bet that you're a crazy person.
You have to be if you want to be a YouTube commenter, that's what I'm saying.
Like, come on, like, even these programs that did exist, they didn't find anything. There's no published proof that it ever got anywhere. It was kind of like the laughingstock of the military. Like, maybe it's in secret, I don't know, but stop being a cunt on our YouTube video. Like, maybe we would have interviewed you if you were just nice about it.
Quite possibly.
You had to go all crazy, I don't know.
That's the moral of the situation, kids. Be nice to us.
Yeah, we're not horrible people. Maybe we have some throwaway comments. We don't mean anything by it. Like,
we're people with opinions on the internet. We're no better than you are.
yeah,
You're no better than us.
but if you're mental, we'll probably laugh about it. Like,
Probably.
It's just normal.
Because that's how we find amusement. Sue us.
It wasn't all insane, though. I'm still not entirely sure what this means, but somebody on Reddit donated us a month, well, my account, a month of Reddit Gold.
Ah, lucky ducky.
I pasted the link to the show, like, check this out, and we got some Reddit Gold. So that's pretty cool. I've never really had anything, like, I've been on Reddit for 7 years. I've got the little 7-year badge, but I've never had anyone do that to me, so cool.
Well, there's always a first time for everything, and I hope you enjoy your Reddit Gold.
I'm not sure what it does though. Like,
it's just premium membership. That's all it is. Just
I get to make this. I went on it. I get to make this, like, it's called a gravatar or something.
Gravatar, yeah.
But it doesn't appear anywhere. I don't really understand what the point is. Like, I just make this funny little guy. It's like a create a character thing in a video game, but I don't really know what it's for. But
use it on WordPress. That's where I use mine.
Oh, maybe. But thanks to Mr. Anonymous Guy. I don't know who you are. You obviously like the show. Maybe the CIA paid us in Reddit Gold because we're doing their bidding.
Haha, yes, we're clearly a front for the CIA.
Yeah, this is how
British men.
This is how they pay their undercover agents, in fucking Reddit Gold.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh dear. One last thing then before we wrap the show up. We'll keep this guy anonymous because I actually know who he is, and there's no hostility here. I've been a friend of him online for quite a while, but he wanted to touch on the pilot episode where we were talking about Scientology and psychiatry, because he's actually volunteered for the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, which is one of the anti-psychiatry groups which was founded by Scientologists. And he's actually, he said he's gone through, I think, the early stages of Dianetics, which is Scientology's kind of therapy sessions, and said it helped him. But this is what he wrote. He says, I've taken part in Scientology. I'm not actively involved now, busy with other stuff, but I did volunteer with the CCHR. They campaign for informed consent with GPs and psych prescriptions, and they campaign for awareness for ADHD drugs for children and teens, and try and make parents aware of side effects so parents can make informed decisions, and they advise them on alternative solutions such as changing the diet and exercise, etc. Sure. I think, like we said in the episode, I'm not pro big pharmaceutical companies. I know they cut corners sometimes. I know they don't always do enough studies. I know that doctors aren't perfect, and sometimes they're too quick to just say, take these pills, see how it goes. A more informed public, I don't disagree with that. I think we kind of did make that point. But I guess my response is, if you want a campaign and kind of get this view out there, why do you have to do it through the CCHR? Why do you have to do it through a Scientology, front group? If you have these opinions that perhaps pharmaceutical industry isn't all it's cracked up to be, and there are alternative, methods and alternative medicines, you don't need to do it as part of a cult.
No, not at all.
You can just say, hey, you can have the same opinion without being the foot soldier of a cult and trying to get people to. I mean, I don't know what this guy did. I don't think he obviously wasn't some hardcore Scientologist, but that's just kind of my view on it. If you have those views, fine, but you don't have to, be part of this organization. I did pull up a few things here. So the CCHR, this group has done some very silly things over the years that kind of calls into question their credibility. For example, they said that psychiatry was to blame for 9/11.
Of fucking course it was.
They said that Ayman al-Zawahiri, who was sort of like one up from Bin Laden, but they basically said that he was Bin Laden's psychiatrist and he brainwashed Bin Laden into orchestrating the attacks, and it was psychiatry's fault. And after 9/11, at Ground Zero, they were running around with their anti-psychiatry leaflets, pissing people off. So
that's how you piss people off, with them leaflets.
It's like, to me, that's just silly rhetoric. It just paints the impression that this is a fanatical anti-psychiatry group, and anything that happens in the world, anything that's on the media, they will find a way to spin it against psychiatry. Like, they're not being rational people when they make claims like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think, as me and Sam tried to get across in the first episode, there are grey areas to all of these things. The point is, know your sources of information. Know when there's perhaps ulterior motives and agendas, like Scientology. It's a cult. They want members. They're going to try and get people on side. And if you agree with certain bits of Scientology, I'm sure some of it makes sense. Take those bits and discard the rest. You don't have to be an acolyte of Scientology. If they say some interesting things, well, fine, they say some interesting things. Campaign for awareness about doctors and prescriptions and things on your own, So that's kind of the way I take it. I think that about wraps up episode 2 here, Sam. Where can people find our other podcasts that we're involved in? Because I listened to the latest broadcast and I thought that was pretty funny. So where can people check that out?
Well, if you are a wrestling fan and you want to check out some different material to what you've heard here today, you can go to supla.com, where we have a wide variety of shows, including Supla News, where we talk about wrestling headlines. We have Total Divas Review, where I myself rip into one of the worst cases of reality television. And we also have the Broadcast, where we just let loose and we talk about whatever the hell we want to talk about. And we make fun of someone who's eating chili for the first time in his entire life.
Yeah, and if you're easily offended, then actually, yeah, go listen, because it'll be funny to see what your responses are, because this is just a bunch of guys having a laugh.
Yeah, that's funny. All it is. It's very fun.
Of course, we also want to hear from you guys in the comment section on YouTube and on Facebook. If you have any feedback, if you hate us, then let us know. If you love us, let us know. If you want to give us more gold, let us know. And if you have any stories that you want us to cover, also let us know. And hopefully we'll get to it on the show. I've been yshirt.co.uk editor Keelan Balderson.
And I've been Sam Brooks.
And we'll see you again for episode 3. Take care, everybody.
Catch you then.